So if you go to our YouTube channel, I think we had how many views did we have for this? I know we had about 70 people or so last week when you count all of the different platforms. And as far as last week, we've had 109 views on YouTube. So obviously, hopefully some people went back and viewed it again. So if you ever want to see it, it's on YouTube as well.
And what's your
I'll text it to you. It's Wolicog
mm-hmm.
and WOLICOG twice. So Wolicog live stream, and then it should come up. But I'll send you the link for the YouTube channel.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm on YouTube all the time. I watch a lot of track. I'm big into track, so I
Oh,
watch.
really? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's Rebel.
Yeah.
Oh, he just put it in the chat. So you can see it right there. All right, 7:32, Rudy. I'm going to start letting folks in. And I'm going to get started. All right. Good evening, everyone. The time is now 7:32. It is a Tuesday evening. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that everyone has had a wonderful day, a very productive day. And so we are glad that you can be with us tonight. We have another great session in store for you. So if you have a few seconds, which you do, or a minute or two, go ahead and share the link with someone that you do not see. So that way they can go ahead and join and be a part of this great session tonight with Dr. Christie again. So go ahead and share it out if you want to grab a notebook, a pen, pencil, something to write with. Going to be a lot of good information that's shared tonight. So we definitely want you to partake in that information. So again, good evening to everyone. Those of you that are viewing via Zoom, you can go ahead and put a one-word response about how your day was today. One word. In terms of our speaker tonight, Dr. Christie, he does solicit your questions. So if you are on Zoom, then you can go ahead and put your questions in the chat. You can also unmute. And then we would also like to see who we're talking to, who's asking a question. So we would ask that you unmute and that you also turn your camera on, and then you can ask your question in real time, obviously. And Dr. Christie is going to make sure he answers it to the best of his ability. But again, welcome all. Welcome if you're joining by Facebook, if you're joining by YouTube Live, we welcome you tonight. So as you know, last week we started a session with Dr. Christie, and this month is American Heart Month. Let me just share my screen real quick. So this month is American Heart Month, and so in addition to Black History, because we are very familiar with February being Black History Month, but it is also American Heart Month. And so therefore we wanted to make sure that we speak about our health, because that's so important that we take care of ourselves. And so we had Dr. Christie, who graciously inclined himself to be here. And so he opened up last week. We had a lot of great information. And one of the things that he was really honing in on last week is the fact that we tend to be so busy, especially when we're in the church doing a lot of religious activities and things of that nature. And sometimes we don't really take the time out to make sure we're managing our health and we are healthy enough to do the work that God has called us to do. And one of the things that he expressed over and over and over is take care of the things that you can take care of, and then let God do the rest. Sometimes we worry ourselves into an early grave And, it's over things that we do not control. So we have a loving God that we always talk about, a loving Father who is omniscient, he's omnipotent, he's omnipresent, all things are in his hands. Then we have to be able to say, you know what, God, I'm going to leave this in your care and not worry about it. So that's one of the sentiments that was expressed over and over last week. So again, we're so glad to have Dr. Christie with us. Dr. Donovan Christie is a medical doctor. He's also the founder of A1 Wellness Medical Center, PC, and the A1 Regenerative Center, and the Picture of Health Foundation. He is passionate about preventive medicine as the practice focuses on integrative and functional medicine, utilizing practical lifestyle and interventions. Dr. Christie received his medical degree from Albert Einstein College of Medicine, his internal medicine and pediatrics residency from Columbia University, and his anti-aging and integrative and regenerative fellowship from the American Academy Medical Center. Dr. Christie is the founder of Picture of Health Foundation Incorporated, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on short-term medical outreach locally and internationally, and wellness education and health screens nationally. He is also the author of the book, Invigorate Yourself with a Lifestyle Medicine. So again, I'm going to stop talking, Luke, as we affectionately call him, to come and share with us at this time. So as you are at home, go ahead and put your hands together, and please help me welcome Dr. Donovan Christie.
Blessings to all. Hope you guys had a great day and you had a good service on Sunday, and you are dealing with your stressors in a spiritual way. You're not trying to fix everything yourself. You're relying on your God-given abilities, and then you pray and you leave it that way. So last week I got into heart disease quite extensively. It was about an hour's presentation, and I wanted to know, that if you guys had any questions that's right off the top of your head, any burning questions that you want to ask, I can take that at any time. You can either put it in the chat and we will address your concerns if you have a question about anything as it relates to heart disease. But in summary, I want you guys to know that heart disease is a modifiable disease. It is not something that once you have it, you have it. It can be modified. And we know exactly what causes cardiovascular or heart disease, and that is high blood cholesterol. How that works, that the cholesterol from animal fat gets embedded in the wall of the artery, creating damage and inflammation. And then there's plaque formation. And then you get, once it's damaged, the body tries to heal it, and it brings all this inflammatory cells, including platelets, that form a plug. And that's how you get a blood clot, which then causes the acute stroke and the acute blockage in the heart that we call a heart attack. So cholesterol, big item. Second item, high blood pressure. They call 90% of blood pressure is called essential hypertension, as though it's something that we need. I say that because I've always hated that term, because it gave us this idea as medical students and doctors in training and attending doctors that this high blood pressure just came out of the blue, came out of nowhere. Didn't have a secondary cause. That's 10%. where you have a hormonal issue, which causes you to retain sodium, or a kidney problem, or some autoimmune disease that's causing the high blood pressure. Now, this is 90% of people with hypertension have essential hypertension. And that means they don't know what caused it, but it's all caused from our lifestyle. The blood pressure goes up as you get older, you get stiffening of the arteries. So, this is all physics, but you need to understand that when you have an elastic vessel, blood vessel, it's better, and it's elastic when you're younger. And as you age, you're going to develop some calcium deposits and some atherosclerosis in the artery, making it stiffer. The heart has to pump anywhere between 60 and 100 times per minute. It has to overcome the pressure that is called the systolic pressure to get the blood out. So it generates this force. If it's pumping against a pliable wall, the heart's not going to be working that hard. That's good. If it's got to work against a thickened wall, like in the aorta, then it's going to work harder. And when it works harder, then the muscle gets bigger, and you get what they call hypertrophy of the heart. So that is one of the major causes of systolic hypertension, is stiffening of the blood vessel, which occurs in age. And you see that in patients that are like late 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's only the top number that's high. The bottom number is normal. That's what we call systolic hypertension. But the typical hypertension that people get in their 30s, which is when it normally starts, 40s, 50s, you're working at this point and you're stressed. Two hormones go up in stress. I want you to write this down. The stress hormone, cortisol, is released, Cortisol. It has many functions in the body, but the one I'm going to talk about is that it's what we call a mineralocorticoid. So it holds on to sodium. So the more sodium you eat, it's going to hold on to more of it. And so when you get stressed, the body craves salt. When you have salt that stays in the body, what follows it? Water. So now, instead of having a volume like this, you have a volume like this, because now you've retained more volume. That creates a higher pressure in your blood vessel. That's where the fluid is. Or it can extravasate and go into the tissues and cause edema, where you have swelling in the legs and sometimes the hands. So salt. So stress causes salt retention. Just put that in your mind. Anytime you get stressed out, you're going to get a craving for salt, and you're going to retain it, because that's what that hormone does. It says, okay, let me hold on to the salt, hold on to the sodium, and your pressure goes up. So that's not essential. To me, that's a cause of how hypertension happens, because of that one hormone. Second stress hormone is adrenaline. Otherwise known medically, we call it epinephrine, norepinephrine. Those are what we call sympathetic hormones, and they create the blood vessel to constrict. Now you have the sodium retention, and now you have this increased pressure, and adrenaline is causing the blood pressure to go up. You're creating a tension in the blood vessel, and you're walking around with that all day. Stressing the arterial system. Some people get a stroke. If it goes up to 180, 200, 220, I've seen as high as 240, 250. And then the bottom number goes up. When the bottom number goes up, then it becomes more chronic. That's when you know you have bona fide hypertension, because now it's the sodium retention is there, your volume overloaded to the extent, and you have now systolic and diastolic hypertension. High blood pressure is anything over 140 on the top number and 90 on the bottom number. Normal is 120 over 80, but I take pressures in the 130s because as people get bigger, their top number tends to go up. And I mentioned the age criteria, how your vessels get a little bit calcified and hardened. So that's how stress causes high blood pressure acutely. And it becomes chronic because why? We are chronically stressed. So being chronically stressed, you're going to get hypertension. What else does stress do? Stress causes you to have sugar craving. When you're stressed, you're not going to eat the apple, or the broccoli, or the carrot sticks, or the celery. You want some real sugar. You want a piece of cake, or you want, bread or sweet, something sweet. The body has these cravings for sugar when you're stressed. It's all hormonal. Our body's regulated that way because sugar is quick energy. So the body is thinking that you're running from a lion or tiger or a bear, and you need the sugar to get into your muscle because the muscle wants the sugar to be able to run. That's quick energy. Burning fat takes time. You got to go through 2 different systems, the Krebs cycle and the cytochrome P40 to generate energy. But sugar is like, you get energy. So these sugar cravings make you gain weight. So many people who are stressed will gain weight, and they become the term that everybody hates, obese, or the term they hate even more, morbid obesity. So stress leads to hypertension, and it leads to diabetes. When you're eating all the sugar and you're not exercising, you're not meditating, you get higher body fat. Sugar, follow me through, sugar causes the body to put out insulin, which is a hormone. If you keep eating sugar every day, the pancreas is putting out, that's the organ that makes the insulin, puts it out. The body becomes resistant to insulin. That is when you have type 2 diabetes, where you have a high level of insulin. To get that sugar out of the blood, the sugar goes from the blood into the cell. You can only store so much as glycogen, the sugar storage product. So everything else, 90% of that sugar gets churned and making fat. Fat cells can be as small as this, and they could be as big as this, because that's their purpose. Fat is energy. It's stored up energy. So when somebody looks at an obese person and think that they're a glutton because of gluttony, because they've just eaten too much, it's a lot of times, it's not that. It's because of the foods they're eating. They're eating the wrong foods. High carbohydrates, which turns into sugar. Lots of sugar. I'm from the Caribbean, and I know we eat a lot of sugar. I used to drink as a kid, going to school, prep school in Jamaica. I used to drink syrup, just this strawberry syrup poured in water. That was my beverage. I just drink it felt like drinking sugar water. And then I would have a cake, a sweet bun, called, we call that bulla. I used to eat a lot of bulla cake. And then I'd eat that and with, I'd have Greta cake and I have all these sweets and all of that. I mean, I came to the States at an early age and I continue to eat that way, but you can get away with that as a kid because your metabolism is fast and the body needs all this extra energy to build bones, build your muscle, your ligaments, so you're growing. Well, once you turn 18 and that growth spurt goes and you continue to do the same thing, in your 20s, you may be able to maintain it, but I guarantee you, in your early 30s, that's when this catches up with you. Start putting on that little belly around the love handles. Your face starts getting rounded. Your neck starts getting expanded. So that's what causes it. I want you guys to know that we truly can control heart disease. We don't have to be statistics. We know why heart disease is still the nation's #1 killer because they push. The Food and Drug Administration is supposed to protect the people from manufacturers, but yet still they allow a lot of genetically modified foods, and I can talk about that in a minute. They allow sugar in sodas, and to the point where there's like 50 grams of sugar in a 12-ounce can of soda. And kids, especially in certain areas, they consume a tremendous amount of sugar. And you wonder why childhood obesity is high. 4 out of every 10 child, 4, would be considered obese. Childhood obesity is at an astronomical level. From the adult perspective, 7 out of 10 adults is either overweight or obese. That was not the case back in, say, 1970, when I first came to this country. It wasn't that case. You'd have 1 or 2 obese kids in the class and everybody would make fun of them. Now, you'd be the rare breed being a normal weight because so many kids are overweight or obese. And it all has to do with the foods, the stress levels, the video games, the lack of activity, the lack of recess that goes on in school. So we start developing hardening of the arteries that early as a kid, as a school-age kid. So by the time you get to be 40 and up, 50, 60, you have significant hardening of the arteries, right? So that's how I want to start it out. I just want to let you guys know about that heart disease is preventable. We just have to eat right, exercise, have good spirituality.
All right, and then Dr. Christie, I just want to remind everyone really quick that you are free to ask questions. So please utilize the chat. You can type your question if you are joining us via Zoom and using the chat feature. And if you are on YouTube or Facebook, you can use the chat features there as well to post your question, and we'll make sure that we ask Dr. Christie your question. If you're on Zoom, you may also mute and also turn your camera on. We would love to see your faces. So you can unmute and turn your camera on and ask your question. I just want to remind everyone about that because it's a lot of good information. And I know when you talk, Dr. Christie, about the sweets and the soda, that was me. And it sure did catch up to me when I got into my late 20s, 30s. And I'm still struggling with sweets because that is my favorite. I love cakes and everything sweet you can think of, every type of dessert. So it's really, I try to tell myself I got to do it in moderation. Maybe I can treat myself once a week to a slice of cake or something like that. And to your point, working in the school system, you're correct in that these students don't really get out and exercise because it's all about the video games. They're always on the phones, and so there's not much by way of going outside and playing basketball and just exercising. That doesn't happen much. So that definitely is a concern and has led to childhood obesity, as you just said.
Yeah. And, we used to play tag. That was a big fun game, just chasing after each other. You didn't even need a ball. You just go out and play tag. Yeah. So what I want to do now, if you can go ahead and put the slides up, I want to talk about how COVID has caused us to become overweight, more so now over the last 2 years than it then had been going on in the past. Now, I'm not saying we didn't have a nice rise of obesity every year. We were having that, and you can look at the trends of obesity trends and how the percentage of the population have become more and more overweight. But since the pandemic, we were shut in, locked in, shut in, whatever. And many people are still have transitioned back in the workforce, but they're now working from home. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you could do in the pandemic to prevent weight gain. Next slide. I was trying to change it myself, realizing that you have the control, Pastor. All right. All right. So let's look at this one. Essentially, what this is showing, it's a real thing. If you've put on 20 pounds over the last 2 years, it's because your regular activity has reduced. You may not recognize it. Oh, you may have, but nearly half of the women and about a quarter of the men said that they gained weight due to COVID restriction. So about 50% of women and 25% of men, when polled, say that they've gained weight throughout this COVID time. This is not surprising because a lot of our regular routines, and I mean, you may have not been going to the gym, but since you don't have to go to work, right? Especially if you're working in, you're not getting up, walking to the car, parking, walking from the parking lot to the job, maybe going upstairs, maybe taking the elevator, moving, walking to the coffee machine, getting up, taking breaks here and there, chatting with your friends, you were more active. So it kind of like, you don't realize, but all of those calories, all of those things burn calories, right? Now, if you were a regular gym goer, most of the gyms, they want you to wear a mask when you go into the gym. You try running with a mask on, or for that matter, doing the elliptical or doing the stepper. You kind of get used to it after a while, but it's certainly not easy if you're really trying to exercise to wear a mask. And that's what they were mandating it. Oh, you have to wear a mask. And then, what they did was they would say they would have a row of treadmills. They would have every other treadmill inactivated. So you can't use it as to create the 6 feet social distance that's been recommended by the CDC. So our activity has definitely gone down because of the way COVID has confined us. Next slide. Next slide, Pastor. So, when you were in college and you went to school and you were on the dorm, you as a high schooler, you went to school, most people gain weight their freshman year if they're not playing, varsity ball or any type of sports. They will just, because they have a meal plan, they eat all the junk that they feed kids in school, a lot of carbs. And if they're not active, they're going to gain it. It's called a freshman 15. Now they're calling the weight gain that people have as quarantine 19 for COVID-19. So that's how they're referring the weight gain that people have during the COVID pandemic. So next slide. So here's what's happening. You're snacking while you work, especially if you're working at home. The lockdown occurred in March 2020. And everyone started to work from home because, you know, you had to rush out. If you didn't have a computer, or you didn't have the right internet, you had to upgrade on your internet. You needed to do things so that you can work at home, get a good printer and fax machine, and you know, that's what we were doing. But if you stayed there and you set up your shop in the kitchen, the food is right there. And I'm sure, you know, when you went out with your mask, you picked up all the Twinkies and the cupcakes and everything because you know you're going to need it. You're hibernating. So you would pick up these foods and you would have them in your house. And routinely, if you weren't at work, you know, if you weren't at home, you wouldn't be eating this much. So being at home created a craving for you to eat more. So you just kind of pick up the food, and it's called mindless snacking, and you just ate. And when you ate too much bread, you know, bread is good if you have a whole grain and you do it, you know, a couple of times a week. But if you're eating bread, and a lot of the breads that are in these buns are white bread, bleached flour, really minimal nutritional benefits because it's been devitalized. I don't do white flour, and I would won't tell you guys don't do white flour because white flour, the bleached flour is really, it's like sugar. The glycemic index of white flour is similar to sugar. It raises your blood sugar just like that. So yeah, you know, that's what's going on with that. Next one, too much snacking. So what you need to do is to move out of the kitchen and you need to find a designated workplace that will reduce your chances of snacking too much. I mean, the best thing is not to buy them, right? Buy some fruits are bad because of the sugar. You know, you're going to hear me say, people say, eat your fruit and vegetables. If you're obese or if you're trying to lose weight, eating fruits won't work. Bananas are sweet, high caloric. Grapes are sweet. Mangoes, forget it. That's probably the highest. And you think these are good things, and they have good antioxidants and enzymes, but the sugar kind of, you know, when you're trying to reverse that fat storage that you have, you have to stay away from fruit. The only fruit that's recommended in a quote unquote ketogenic like diet are berries, blueberries and raspberries. And you know, those are not that sweet, right? Raspberries, strawberries, you can have those when you're doing a low glycemic index foods, but you can't have the majority of fruits are loaded with too much sugar. But if you had to eat fruits, overeating a Twinkie or a cupcake or a slice of cake, go that route because at least you're getting the benefit of the fiber, the enzymes, and everything else. Okay.
All right,
I'm
so
okay.
we have a question here. Good evening, doctor. What about unbleached flour?
Well, unbleached means that they haven't taken out all of the nutrients. Bleached flour, they've taken out about 90% and then added maybe a couple back. Unbleached means that they probably only took out 50%. You need to get your flour that says whole grained and not processed. It doesn't need to be processed where they're removing good stuff. You know, I mean, it's like if you look at wheat, the reason why wheat has such a bad, you know, because of the protein, there's protein in wheat, right? The gluten is a protein, and that's a sticky protein that sticks to the GI tract. And wheat and corn, soybeans in this country, 99% of it is genetically modified. So here's what happened. You produce this genetically modified because they've selected seeds that are bigger but less nutritious. They grow faster, and you can make a whole lot more. That's why they use GMO. But it's not better for you because it's less nutritious. So now you have wheat with such a higher content of gluten in it, and less vitamins, less minerals, less enzymes, all of this. It sticks to the gut and it creates leaky gut. That's why many people cannot eat gluten. They're on a gluten-free diet because what does gluten do? It sticks to the gut and it creates leakiness. It creates inflammation in the gut. So if you have, and I hate using that term, but I'm on an organic diet this week because I'm doing a detox, and we have a 7-day detox that we do at our clinic. Probably one of my top selling. It comes in a kit and it has a powder made from brown rice protein, and it has a lot of amino acids, particularly glutamine, which heals the gut, helps to seal up the leakiness of the gut. And it's wonderful because once you do this for 7 days, you're drinking that beverage twice a day for 7 days, you're taking vitamins and you're taking the antioxidants and the herbal things that help with the liver to detoxify, like resting the liver, just getting rid of toxins and heavy metals and pesticides and herbicides and all the things that make us sick. And then you heal your gut. Utilizing good probiotics, beneficial bacteria that we live in a symbiotic relationship with. We cannot live without bacteria. Bacteria lives in our gut. The lactobacillus bacteria, the bacillus bacteria, the Saccharomyces boulardii bacteria. All of those are good bacteria that help to break down foods that we eat. They help to extract the nutrients so that we can utilize it to make folic acid, to make B12. There's so many things that why our gut flora, the flora of the bacteria, the types of bacteria, is so important because it's protective. If bad bacteria grows, like Serratia, E. coli, Clostridium, those things create diarrhea. They create malabsorption. So you want to make sure that your army of good bacteria is there. So I recommend a good probiotic every day. When you have leaky gut, you're putting yourself at risk for autoimmune disease, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, biliary cirrhosis. There's over 40 different autoimmune diseases, thyroiditis, diabetes type 1. The body attacks itself. So your gut and what you eat is so important to keep that milieu, the environment, I like that French term, so that your body stays healthy, all right?
All right, so we got 2 more questions, Doc. This is a Facebook question. How often and how much cake or cookies is medically safe to snack on?
That question is definitely from a sugar addict. I know that,
It's a good question, but it's not for me if that's what you're thinking, but it's a good one.
Yeah, I like that question because I think it depends. It depends on the person. I can't just set a set number and say, well, 2 pieces of cake a week is okay. What I would say is if you're trying to lose weight, now if you're normal weight, your BMI is 26, 27, 23 to 27, that's a good BMI for me. I think if you're too skinny, you run into problems, just like if you're too heavy, you run into problems. But 27 and say 23, that's a good area, maybe 22. If your BMI is 35 or 40 and you have to lose 30, 50, 100 pounds, you don't need to be eating that at all. That's how rigid I am with my people. I'm like, no, you can't eat that. When you get to a point where you can get to, then if you want to cheat and do it one time, but I'm not going to give you permission to go ahead and, that's just the way I am. So I think if you're a normal person, you can have a slice of cake with no problem, once or twice a week.
All
But if
right.
you're trying to lose weight, not.
Question number 2, can diabetics use the detox you mentioned?
Very good question. The core restore, that's what it's called, because the core is the body, the belly area. It's very good for diabetics. However, when they're on the program, they have to not use insulin. If they're type 1, they have to continue to use their insulin because they need that. But if they're type 2, which is 90% of diabetics, they basically will need to stop their insulin if they're on insulin. And the doctor will reduce their hypoglycemic agent, if it's metformin, if it's glipizide, if it's one of the newer agents. I would definitely reduce it because the caloric intake over the 7 days is low. You do start to eat again on the 3rd day, which is where I'm at. Today I had some brown rice with some organic curry chicken. It was great to be able to eat after 2 days, and I felt, oh, okay, great. But what I noticed, and I've done this detox now for at least 7, 8 times. I try to do it at least twice a year, but I usually only get to do it once a year, and it's usually in January. But this January went by so quick, I didn't get a chance to do it. So the 3rd day you eat, and it has to be organic foods. You cannot eat antibiotic-laced, hormone-laced meat. You can have meat, but it has to be organic. Grass-fed. These things need to be walking on the grass. They need to be running around in a wild environment. You can't have any fish because even the wild caught fish it's in the bottom of the ocean. And what's in the bottom of the ocean? There's mercury. There's so many oil spillages. So when you're detoxifying, we don't want you to do fish for that week. After that, you can have fish. But just to let you know that when you're eating fish from the sea, you're getting a lot of heavy metals. And mercury is one of them. Lead, cadmium, all of those things are not good for you to have in your body. So your question was, what was the question again?
Can diabetics use the detox?
Oh, yeah, so they can do it. So I would decrease their medicines, and then I would have them on their meal day, on their fasting days, the first 2 days, I would have them snack on things like vegetables, carrots, and fruit. They can have that, and it won't mess up the detox. We just like the first 2 days just to drink the beverages and water to keep you full so you don't get a headache. And what that does, the body is not pumping all the blood into the stomach or the intestinal area to absorb nutrients. It's pumping it. It's the energy that you have on your body is going to detoxify you. And it's just pulling things out of the fat and all the stuff. Because, fat stores everything. All the bad stuff is stored in fat cells. So it pulls it out. And so when you're eating, the energy is still, you're basically sending half your troops versus when you're fasting, you're sending the full battalion to go and fight your battles for you. So that's essentially the first 2 days should be a fast with the beverages. And then the last 5 days, you get to eat 1 meal a day. Ideally, sometimes I'll allow people to eat 3 meals a day. But they have to be organic foods, and it cannot include wheat, soy, dairy. Those are the big bad ones, the big bad 3. You want to keep away from those. Those create inflammation in the body. Okay.
All right, we have a few more questions. The next one is, how can a person get rid of leaky gut?
You have to heal it. It takes a little while. Let me tell, first of all, what are the signs of leaky gut? If you've already gotten an autoimmune disease, essentially that's a disease you've created. And now you have to be very meticulous for the rest of your life. But the first signs of leaky gut are bloating, cramping. When you eat certain foods, you get bloated. You eat beans, you get bloated. You have bad bacteria in your gut that's producing gas. So you're gassy. Um, you know, those are the normal signs. You can have pain. They're like IBS, what we call irritable bowel syndrome type symptoms. You can be constipated, you can have diarrhea, you can just have pain and bloating, and just an overall feeling of not feeling good, fatigue. That's what we consider to be leaky gut. Now, if we're not biopsying people's intestines and looking to see are the cells straight like this, or there's gaps between it and things are leaking through. We're not doing that. This is a clinical diagnosis that most people in America have: leaky gut. Lots of people, if you're eating fast food, you're putting in fast food in your body on a regular basis, you have bloating, you have irritable bowel, you have leaky gut. And it's just a matter of time before you develop some disease.
All right. The next question is for those interested in the detox, do you have a link for the core?
I don't have a link, but if you go on our website, oh yeah, you can go on our website and order it. We normally have to order like a lot of them in January because that's when people usually detoxify with their doc. We had a program called Detox with Your Doc, and everyone would get on the bandwagon, and then every day they would get an email saying, you can do it, stick to it. The first 2 days are the hardest. That last 5 days, your energy bursts out like on day 3, day 4, your energy after you have your first meal, you have all this energy, because the body's like, yes, it loves it. The fatigue goes away. And, you just continue to plan, eating all your organic foods, drinking your 2 shakes a day for all 7 days, taking your pills, your vitamins, and your antioxidants. So
Ready for the next one?
yeah.
All right. How can you lose weight in the stomach without Odin on sit-ups?
That's diet. I will tell you that to lose belly fat, that's where most people have it. And that's because it's hormonal, where for men especially, the testosterone will kind of punt the fat towards the belly, because that's the area where you don't have to worry about in terms of if you should have to fight a lion or a tiger or a bear. But to lose that way, and it's always the last weight to lose. You lose it in your face and your neck. The belly fat is diet. You have to pretty much not consume sugar for an extended period of time. And you have to do cardiovascular. It's not sit-ups. Yes, you do some sit-ups, but you don't have to overdo sit-ups. You do leg lifts, you do some crunches, but that's not what's going to give you that flat stomach. You see fat people doing crunches, you think that what is that doing? That's, it's what you're taking in. You have to burn the calories from within. So low carb, protein, you need a higher protein. And if you're not taking in the carb, then you can also do a keto program. That was when you burn your fat. And it takes a while, but it will gradually go down. And then the last thing will go away is your love handles. That takes, sometimes men, they just get so frustrated, they'll lose the front part and the love handles are still there. They'll just go get it cut off.
All right. So the last question right now, Doc, is you spoke about the danger of sugar. I've noticed that every food in the store has sugar. How much grams of sugar should we take?
On a regular basis, yeah,
Mhm.
for sugar, it should be between between 30 and 50 grams for the day. Now, carbohydrates are different, right? I'm talking about, if you look under the carbs, it'll have sugar, it'll have added sugar, and then you have fiber. Fiber is a carbohydrate too. So you have to subtract the fiber from the overall sugar. And that's what's going to give you your overall carbohydrates. So 50 grams of sugar is plenty. 30 grams is better. If you're looking at total overall carbohydrate, you're on a ketogenic program, then you don't want to take in more than 30 grams of carbs, and that's all carbs. So yeah, fiber is protective. You want to make sure you have fiber, but not simple sugar, not sugar that breaks down. Complex carbohydrates, the body has to work hard, like fiber. You have to work hard to break it down. So the net caloric intake is 0. That's why you can eat broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage and kale and spinach. They don't even want to limit that on you, because the fact is that the body has to work so hard to break it down into sugar that the energy expended exceeds the energy of the food. Okay? So yeah, I would say no more than 50 grams. Let me finish out this presentation, Pastor. You want to go to the next slide? I was talking about obesity and what they need to do, basically get away from the kitchen. Activity level has gone down. So what I mentioned before, if you're homeschooling, I guess that's not as happening as much now, but it was happening a lot, because I think most of the kids have gone back to school now. But this was an issue. People would their activity level just went down, down, down. And the fact that you're home means you just don't move as much. We don't want that. We want to make sure that stationary bike, the Peloton, I think they made more money in that year and a half that everyone was locked in, because they were suffocating. They needed something to do. And, it's so engaging that everyone wanted a Peloton. There was a waiting list to get it. Now they made too much, and now they're running in trouble because they can't get rid of them fast enough. But yeah, you needed to have some activity that you can do without getting dressed and going to the gym.
So we have, I'm sorry, Doc.
No, go ahead.
We have another question. It says, would you recommend the Daniel type fast for losing weight?
Yes, I would. But I've done the Daniel fast for the last 10 years. Every January, I did not do it this year. I said everything just got crazy for me this year, and I was not able to do the Daniel fast. But I'm doing the core, because I normally start the first week of the Daniel fast with the core, the detox, and then the last 2, I do the fruit and vegetables. The thing with the Daniel fast is that it's good because you're going to have lower calories. But if you're eating a lot of starchy vegetables, if you eat a lot of potatoes, if you eat a lot of rice, if you eat, you're not supposed to have wheat on the Daniel fast. I have a lecture on that too, the Daniel fast. But if you eat a lot of starchy carbohydrates on the Daniel fast, your weight loss will be minimal. If you eat a lot more fibrous vegetables and not a lot of sweet fruits, it can be so it depends on how you select your food. And you have to drink a lot of water, right? And you can't drink a lot of juices. Why? Juices have a lot of sugar. So you can use it for weight loss, but you still have to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you won't lose it. If you're going to eat rice and beans for lunch and for dinner again, that ain't gonna, you're not going to lose weight doing that. All right. So starches are important. You have to make sure you minimize those. Okay. Should I go on? Next slide.
Yep, and what I'll do, Doc, so that way you can get through it, I'll hold the questions to the end if that's all right with you.
That's fine. Let me just finish out this because it's only 12 slides. I think this is number 9. All right, so this is exercise. A lot of people were not exercising. It wasn't a priority because, God forbid, yet this virus killing 5 million people. But you have to realize that the body has a lot of muscles and we're designed for movement. You just sit down and not move, you're creating a problem for your body. Not only chiropractic, orthopedic issues that comes from just sitting down, bending over a computer, but you really need the mental benefits from exercise, the endorphins, the good hormones that are released when you have exercise. Exercise boosts your immune system. So that is so important, it's just like anything else that you do. If you practice, if you train for something, you get better, right? Exercise is good for the gut. Blood flow rushes through the legs and the fat and everything because it's all over the place, and it's cleansing you. If you're doing strength training, it builds your muscle. And the more muscle mass you have is the more fat you'll burn, right? You need muscle to have a decent metabolic rate because that's what defines how much calories you burn, is how much muscle you have. If you don't have enough muscle, you're not going to burn a lot of fat. Athletes, a perfect example. If you could be 225 pounds chiseled, and then you can have another person, 225 pounds, that looks terrible because they have a big gut and they look bad and, they're slumping around. It really has to do, one person has a lot of muscle and well-defined, and that person probably eats 3 times as much as the person that doesn't look that good. Muscle requires food. So if you want to eat a lot and you're a glutton, exercise to kind of balance it out and build your muscle tone. All right, so it boosts your immune system. And the best part of it, I talked about it relieves stress, but anxiety and depression was at an all-time high, is at an all-time high during this pandemic. Many people have lost loved ones. Many people have come into dealing with the fact that they are at risk of dying. We're in a toxic environment. We have viruses killing people left and right? It's not like you did anything. Well, you went to the supermarket, came back with a runny nose. Next thing you know, you're on a ventilator in the hospital. So that creates anxiety. If somebody sneezes on you, you're ready to knock them out or cough on you. And then, the depression, anxiety accompanies with depression. You have to you work, and you look at people who look at the negatives all the time, they get depressed. People who try to solve problems that are way beyond their scope or their ability, because only God can solve things. You can't change people, you only change yourself and how you react to it. But any physical activity that can fit in your day, even a 5-minute walk, will be helpful to keep you from gaining weight during this time. It's getting better though. And I think this summer is going to be really good. I'm hoping this pandemic really goes away by June. They're thinking it's going to be another surge. You listen to different sources, they think things are going to happen, but I'm praying that it doesn't. Next slide. So people underestimating their calories because when they were locked up, they were buying food and cooking it. That's the good news. They were cooking more. So you know what you're putting in your body versus buying food where they're putting all these appetite stimulants in it. All the fast food chain use sugar as an appetite stimulant. It makes you want to eat more. Or they use monosodium glutamate that makes you want to drink more. And these things are okayed by the FDA, so they do it. You know, almost all food tastes better if it's sweet. They just sprinkle sugar in it. No matter how bad it is, they just sprinkle sugar. Oh, this is good. And you eat it up. So when you're cooking, though, you have to make sure that you're not preparing 3 large meals a day, because then you're going to eat it. You're home all day. You're like, okay, I'll have a plate now, then I'll later, then I'll have a plate for dinner. But before, you'd only have a big meal at dinner, which is not good. You really should have, the ideal eating pattern should be either 1 meal a day or 5 small meals a day. 1 meal a day where you have intermittent fasting, or 5 small meals a day where you're constantly eating every 2.5 hours, but small portions to keep the metabolism burning. All right. Now, when your people are home, they're underestimating calories. They're returning to a lot of comfort foods, as I mentioned before, a lot of sweets and alcohol to relieve stress. Next slide. Next slide, Pastor. So obviously, small portions are better. You want to scale back, make a weekly plan for your meals. And then you can, when you go shopping, pick up those things. Stay away from the chips, and the chocolate, and the cakes, and the pastry aisle, the baked goods aisle. None of that is good for you if you're trying to lose weight and avoid weight gain. Logging the foods that you eat is very important if you're trying to lose weight. Writing it down. And when you look back on it, you'll be amazed. Oh my God, I was eating that much. But quantity does matter. Portion size does matter. Okay, next slide. Sleep. When you're stressed, when you're anxious, when you're depressed, a lot of people have a hard time sleeping. This is what happens. When you're not sleeping, I saw that question in Scuffer. I'll answer that in a minute. Let me finish this slide. So when you're sleep deprived, you're making ghrelin. That's the hormone that tells your body that you're hungry. So you're not sleeping well. You didn't get restful sleep. You didn't heal your body throughout the night. Because you went to bed at 1, and then you have to get up at 6. So you got 5 hours of sleep, not restful. You make less leptin. That's the body that tells you that that's the hormone that tells you that you are satisfied. So you want to produce actually more leptin and less ghrelin. The opposite happens when you don't get enough sleep. Next slide. Next slide. Sleep balances the hormones. During sleep, your body balances these hormones, but when you're not getting enough sleep, you end up with a hormonal imbalance. You need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Yeah, I know. How many adults can tell you they get 7 to 9 hours of sleep? Most of America is sleep deprived. Most people are getting 5 and 6, some people less. But you need 7 hours of sleep for restful healing, for your hormones to work right, for your cortisol to come out in a diurnal pattern, for your ghrelin and your leptin. All of those things is important. The body needs that time to rest. When you don't sleep, you feel hungrier. You ever stay up at night, say, I'm gonna lime a bit and hang. You end up eating, right? I mean, that's just extra calories that you wouldn't have put on because you'd be sleeping. So when you're hungry, like when I'm fasting, I try to get in bed by 9 o'clock because I don't want to think about food. So I just get into the bed and go to sleep if I can. So you have to log off all your devices. The blue light on your smartphone will keep you up. Do some relaxing activity, not the TV, when you're getting ready for bed. You can read. If you don't feel like you're sleepy, pick up a book. That's the best sleeping pill. You're not going to stay up reading all night because once you start reading, you're going to get sleepy. Most people, right? So you can do that, or you can stretch, and your appetite will thank you, and your waistline too. Next slide.
And this is the last slide, Doc.
Okay. You want to practice a healthy diet. You need detoxification. I talked about that. It should be done minimally once a year, ideally every 3 months or a week. You want to make sure your bacteria in your gut is good. The best diet to lose weight is to get as keto as possible, which is to reduce the carbs, prevent the fat hormone, insulin from coming out to store fat. And then the only way to do it is not to give it the carbs or the sugar. Sugar worse, carb second. And the kind of carb is important. Starchy carbs still raises the insulin. Potatoes, corn, wheat, all of that, it still raises it. So you want to do your fibrous vegetable if you're trying to lose weight. Obesity, we know, I never mentioned it as a risk factor for heart disease. It's because it causes everything else. It causes high blood pressure. It causes high cholesterol. It causes diabetes. And all of those combined causes hardening of the artery. We have IV nutritional therapy. I don't have really time to talk about that, but we do infusions of vitamin C, of B vitamins, cocktail. We do for chronic fatigue and for inflammation, we use glutathione. We do that in an IV push. So we do all these nutritional nutrients in an IV form, so we flood the body with it, and it promotes healing. All right, that's the last slide.
That is the last slide. But we do have a couple of questions. The first one is, how can you eat 1 meal a day without getting a headache?
You get a headache because you get dehydrated. It's not because of low blood sugar. Low blood sugar, you'd get dizzy. You got to drink more. People don't drink enough water. I didn't even talk about water. But water is very, very important to keep you well hydrated. And so the brain is not going to sense that dehydration. And the headache, you won't get a headache. Just try it and you'll see. And then I always drink a lot of, you see me sipping my tea. This is mint tea. Herbal teas are great when you're fasting. You can't just drink water. You do something to flavor it up. So green tea is good because that helps to burn fat. But I like peppermint tea. I like lemon tea, chamomile for the nighttime. Those are low caffeinated, if not no caffeine in those teas, herbal teas.
All right. Is bulgur a good substitute for rice?
No. Bulgur is very starchy as well. So if you're normal weight, if you're one of the 30%, then you can eat it. But if you're one of the 70%, you can probably have it once a month to substitute. But it's starchy.
Which detox is quick and easy?
Well, that's America. That's an American. We're all Americans thinking. Everybody wants things that are quick. You got to work hard for things, man. That's just the way to. Now, there's no quick. I mean, there is quick detoxes where people are detoxifying themselves with salt water. They just drink salt and just let it rush through them, and they can just dump everything that's in their GI tract. I don't like those types of rapid pulling out. Then you get dehydrated because the salt pulls everything out of you, and you then, pull it out. So I don't like that. Then you have the lemonade fast that people use to detox with the cayenne pepper. I think that's harder to do than a core restore. That's a 7 to 10 day fast. Some people do it longer than that. But I have to have for me personally, I have to have the sensation of chewing. I need to be able to chew. So, after 2 days of just drinking smoothies and drinking water and tea, it's good for me to get something to bite into, like a piece of broccoli or, whatever.
All right. So the next question is, what kind of bread is okay to eat?
Bread, whole grain bread, and limited quantities. If you like bread a lot, you can't do it every day. You can't pick bread from a tree. So that means that it's processed. They have to get the flour, mill it, and then a lot of times they do other things to it. They devitalize it. And I'm sure you're not talking about white bread, because that's a no-no. It should be whole grain. Those are healthier breads. And you can have those foods because people had them for years. I'm not saying you can't have it. I'm talking to people because 70% of Americans are overweight and they eat bread every day. And they wonder why I can't lose weight. I can't lose this weight, doc. I can't lose this weight. Because you're eating too much starch. Bread and rice and potatoes are people's staple. God, no bread. You should see the looks on people's face when they tell them you can't have bread. What? It's like not, they might as well not live, because like, if I can't have bread, I just can't do it.
Along those lines, let me ask the next question. Are all potatoes bad?
No. Sweet potato is actually better because of the color. There's more antioxidants in it, right? So it's good for you. White potato is good for you too because it still has good fiber in it. I'm just talking about volume. Okay, you can have a sweet potato, you can have a white potato. If you're trying to lose weight, that's going to slow your weight loss. So let's get onto that. But I'm not poo-pooing starchy vegetables as being unhealthy. We're trying to turn down the stimulus for fat production. And the way to do that is to keep away from starches. Okay? So no, they're healthy foods. Carrots, healthy food. It's starchy, so you still have to limit the amount if you're trying to lose weight. And I love carrots.
All right. What is your take on Nuriva brain supplement?
I don't know it. I saw that question pop up. I don't know what Nuriva. You'd have to give me more information.
All right. So if that person if you want to unmute and turn your camera on, you can elaborate on that question, or you can
type you tell me what's in it. Yeah, so tell me what's in it, because everybody have a brain supplement. We have one at N1. It's called Brain Support. Because everything we have, we call it support. It supports healthy cognitive function. So we have all the classics, vinpocetine, we have the omega, the DHA, part of the omega-3. It has the ginkgo biloba to improve the cerebral circulation. So, I don't know what's in yours. It's just a brand name. Okay. Vitamin E is good for the brain. I mean, there's a lot of things that they throw in things and the marketing, and they're able to get people to buy it, So I don't know. I don't know about that one.
Is monk food sweetener a healthy sweetener?
Yeah, it is. It's very good. I use monk fruit, stevia, and there's another liquid that looks like agave, but agave has a glycemic index that's much better than honey, right? It's not that sweet. It doesn't raise the insulin that much. So glycemic index is really related to how quick, when you eat that food, how it's going to stimulate insulin. Is it going to just stimulate it this much? Is it going to go this much? Is it going to go this much? And everything is compared to sugar. Sugar is at 100. Everything else is less than that. So I would say agave would be at like a 50. Monk fruit, stevia would be down here, maybe a 1 or a 2. They do not stimulate insulin release. Now, you use the artificial sweetener. I'm glad you bring that up. So you're going to use Splenda or aspartame. What's the other big one? NutraSweet. These all stimulate insulin. Matter of fact, when people use these artificial sweeteners, they gain more weight. You might as well eat sugar because it's at least the body acknowledges what it is. Don't use any of those artificial sweeteners. They're bad for you, all of them. Monk fruit is a natural sweetener, so is stevia. And this other thing that I can't think of the name, Akana syrup or something. Akana syrup. I bought it. I've used it once, and I used it in my tea, but it looks like honey. It's not honey, and it's not agave. And it's got a very low glycemic index, like maybe a 5.
So, Doc, what about the soft drinks that have like the 0 sugar? Obviously, that's not a natural sweetener.
If they have stevia or erythritol, even though that's erythritol is low glycemic, it works just as good, but that is not natural. You know, it's kind of like concocted somewhere.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Is it likely that a person will have type 2 diabetes in the future if they were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in the past?
No, not at all, because you're having type 1 diabetes is the pancreas is not making any insulin anymore. And that's usually autoimmune. Happens usually when kids are anywhere between, the youngest diabetic I've seen is like maybe 7 or 8. And that's terrible because that's like a life that you have to stick yourself in. And many of those kids, when they become teenagers, they run into a lot of psychological issues, but you have to really support them. But no, so when you're type 1 diabetes, you don't have enough insulin, so you take it and you're taking it for the rest of your life. Type 2 is from really eating too much sugar and having the pancreas overwork itself until it burns out. Different disease, treated very differently. Okay.
All right. Got that question. All right, Sister Scoffrey said that bread is a curse word in the diet. No bread at all during that time. All right, so next question.
I guess she's agreeing with me.
Yes, she is.
No, it's fine if you're normal weight. You're not trying to lose weight. Have at it, But I'm telling people what they need to stay away from because of how the body works. The body works that way. If you're trying to lose weight and you're eating the things that are taking away, you may have just walked 5 miles and you burned, say, 800 calories. You come in, you eat 2 slices of bread, you've already put on half of the calories that you just burned. So that's what I'm talking about. Every gram of sugar is going to give you 4 calories. Every gram of fat gives you 9 calories, right? But the difference is how the body responds to the sugar. It just causes the insulin to go up. The fat storing hormone goes up and takes it. Things start putting it on your belly, on your hips, on your neck, on your face, everywhere. So, and it happens overnight. While you're sleeping, this happens.
All right. How much calories are in a boiled green banana?
A green banana has less. It has not been fermented, right? So it hasn't really gotten that much sugar. So it's better from the sugar perspective, but it's just as bad from the carbohydrate perspective. Green bananas has excellent fiber. It's better to do if you're doing a keto diet, but it's still a lot of carbs. I don't know the exact quantity, but it's carbohydrates. All the food that we grew up with in the country in Jamaica, we ate a lot of yam, good for you, quick energy, um, sweet potato, breadfruit, Woko. These are these are different roots that we eat a lot of in Jamaica, and and all the Caribbean has these roots, and they're good for you, right? But in Jamaica, you're walking around all day, you're doing so much work, you're burning that energy. You're not sitting around a computer, right? So our lifestyle has changed. So we have to change our diet and understand how our body works, because we were definitely not made to sit around a computer. That's not how God intended it.
Oh,
Okay.
all right, Doc. We have three more questions, and it is 8:52. So if you do have a question, I'm going to ask that you drop it real quick. We are going to close at 9 tonight. So the next question is, where would you find Monk Sweetener?
Monk is everywhere. It's in Kroger. Before, when it came out a few years back, because stevia was out before it was not in everywhere. You'd have to go to places like Whole Foods and the natural places. And now it's everywhere. It's at Kroger, it's at Publix, and now they have a blend of stevia with monk fruit. I saw that. Maybe I think the first time I saw that was last year. So it's good, and you get used to it. People often say, somebody's had a real sweet sugar addiction when they taste stevia and say, "Oh, I can't stand this. It's just, I can't stand the taste." So they'd rather go back to their sugar because they can't get used to this taste. Oh no, it's disgusting. And it's usually in my practice, it's usually the people who really need to lose weight who can't stand stevia or monk fruit or any of the natural sweeteners.
All right. Is maple syrup good?
Maple syrup is good. It's not good for weight loss, but it's good. I'm going to be saying that because when you guys pick on certain things, I'm going to bring it up so you know that I'm not saying the food is bad. It's not good when you're trying to lose weight.
All right.
And so if you have maple syrup, that means you're going to be eating pancakes. So now ask me if pancakes are good.
Yeah, syrup without pancakes.
Yeah, I'm just joking. But yeah, so it's a good food, but it's just not something you want to do when you're trying to.
Can a person have high blood pressure without any signs?
Yeah, that's why they call high blood pressure the silent killer. Some people are lucky because they feel a rush. They get a little slight headache, they get a little dizziness. They just kind of feel a little unsteady, a little shortness of breath when they go up the stairs. But then other people don't get any sign; they just get a stroke. So that's why you need a checkup at least once a year. Ideally, you should see your if you have a chronic condition, you should see a provider 4 times a year, every 3 months. And that includes type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and get a good physical once a year.
All right. So it is 8:55, and we're going to get these last few questions and then close out. Is honey a good substitute for sugar?
No, honey has the same glycemic index as sugar. Now, honey has other things in it that makes it better, but we're talking about weight loss today. My focus is on weight gain during COVID. So no, you cannot use honey as a substitute. You use a natural sweetener that does not raise the insulin level, which is stevia and monk fruit and a conda syrup or Kana syrup. Those are your choices.
All right. This is a two-part question, not related. What is a good alternative to eating rice? And then you can see it here too, Doc, right? How much grams of sugar should I look for in my organic cereal?
Okay, what a good alternative for rice would be cauliflower, and everybody's been using that now. It's got a lot of fiber and a lot of protein, so that's a good alternative. And for how much grams of sugar in anything that you're eating, you don't want to have any more than 5 grams of sugar.
All
5
right.
is the magic number.
Is it safe to take pills that can help to suppress your hunger? For example, I don't know how to pronounce it. Can you see that? Is it
No, I can't, but I think she means
Caralluma fimbriata?
no, should I scroll up? Is it at the top or no, it's at the bottom?
It's at the very bottom. Is it safe to take pills that can help to suppress your hunger? For example, Caralluma fimbriata, Caralluma, and fimbriata, Fimbriata.
I don't know what that is. I don't know what it is. There used to be some natural things that I recommended for appetite suppressant, but I kind of got away from that. You know, a lot of people now they use phentermine, the drug. I don't particularly like that, but when people come in and say, well, I need phentermine or I'm going to do a bypass, a gastric bypass, then I give it to them. If any of the natural herbal appetite suppressants are effective, my results that I've seen with people has not been very successful.
All right, and here's the last question, Doc. What causes vertigo?
Vertigo is in the middle ear. High blood pressure can cause it. The ear cells in the canal, it looks like a snail, and I'm blanking on the term. There are ear cells in there, and they can be affected by high blood pressure, by diabetes, and just getting old.
All right, and Doc, do you have any closing thoughts? It is now 8:58.
2 minutes closing thoughts. All right, so I did want to just say that.
Okay, I have one more question. One more.
Okay,
Sorry to
so
cut
now
you off. All right, so the question is, what if a person is not diabetic, but your sugar in your blood is too much? How do you cure that?
I obviously you'd have to. I don't see how that could be. Um, Somebody's misinformed you in some way. If you're checking your sugar and it's high in the blood all the time, you have diabetes, and you may have prediabetes. So they have a test called the A1c test. That's the test you need to tell your doctor to get. When you have higher than 6% of your red blood cells with sugar on it, you're diabetic. If it's over 7, when they say an A1c of 6, they're saying that 6% of your red blood cells have sugar. If it's 7, it's 7%. And diabetes is defined as an A1c of 6.5 or greater. Prediabetes is defined as an A1c of 5.8 to 6.4. So you have to get the right tests.
Dr. Christie, would they automatically take that test when you do a physical, or is that something you have to ask for specifically?
Some doctors do. We do it on all our physicals, but most doctors will do it if the patient is overweight or obese, because they know the link between overweight and obesity and diabetes.
All right, Doc, I want to thank you so much, and I'll give you 30 seconds to a minute. Any closing thoughts?
Okay, it's not, I'll take 30 seconds. I just wanted to give a plug for my foundation. My foundation, I created it in 2002 after my mom passed from heart disease. The Picture of Health Foundation, our mission, really, we do these types of seminars. I've given talks to a lot of churches in the last 20 years. We do health fairs. We do screenings for obesity, for high blood pressure, cholesterol, the big things that I talked about that causes heart disease. My favorite activity is to do a short-term mission. We go all over the world. We've been to 8 African countries and 8 South American and Caribbean nations, and we've treated over 20,000 people in that span of time. We do have an annual gala every year, a black tie. That's our biggest fundraiser. We have not had one since 2019, and you know why, of this pandemic. We're probably going to restart everything in 2022. I did do a short-term trip to Uganda last year, but I didn't take a whole team like I normally do. And then in the summer, we normally have a 5K run to fight obesity. So this theme that I've had with obesity and heart disease and high blood pressure, it's all creates, these are the things that are impacting everyone in America, across the world. And we just have to be good stewards, so you can take care of the temple. And that's my last words.
Thank you, sir. You guys, please show Dr. Christie some love in the chat. Let him know how much we appreciate this 2-session, very informative. You're on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and show him some love. If you miss any portion of tonight, you can go to YouTube on WallyCog. I'm gonna ask Rudy if you would drop our YouTube channel in the Zoom. So if anybody wants to go to our YouTube, you can definitely check out anything that you missed, but this was very informative, on point. And so the thing now is that we have to take this information and actually apply it and make sure that we are being good doers of what we're hearing. And just being very intentional, because it's not going to happen by chance. We have to actually put in the work and have some regiments in place for us to be intentional about taking care of ourselves. As I said last week, our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so we need to take care of ourselves, not just our souls and our spirit man, but also the physical man as well, because you're not going to be any good if your body's broken down. Unfortunately, we can't trade it in for a newer model. This is what you have. So we got to make sure we take good care of it. But Dr. Christie, thank you so much. You're very gracious, very kind. I know last week you joined us from a hotel room while you were on a conference. So that just speaks to how passionate he is about making sure we take care of our health and our bodies. And he also included, scripture and, as people of God, what we need to do to not stress and not to worry so much and put ourselves in an early grave. So I love that he put all that together, because that's all important. It all works together. So again, we want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Next week, we'll be back to our normal Bible study. We're going to be studying the fruit and the gift of the Spirit. So please join us next time, same time next week at 7:30 p.m. So let us pray before I let you all leave. Father God, we want to thank you for such a great presentation. We thank you for this information that you have given us. Lord, we thank you for Dr. Donovan Christie. We thank you, Lord, for using him to do your work, to give us information, not just us, but his patients and all those that he served in the Tucker community and everything that he does globally, internationally, to help bring about awareness and to care for those that are in need. So, Lord, we ask that your favor and your grace and your hand of protection will be upon him and on his practice, his colleagues. Lord, I pray that you will continue to allow them to minister to people skillfully, continue to give him wisdom and the intelligence, Lord, to be able to diagnose and to meet the needs of people that will come into his practice, Lord. Father, I thank you for all the listeners that have tuned in this week and last week. God, I pray that we will take this information and actually apply it to our lives, Lord, so we can see some changes, so that way we can be here, God, for our families and for our friends, our loved ones, and most importantly, to do the work that you have called us to do. So God, as we leave tonight, we ask, Lord, that you would please dismiss us with your blessing. And God, we know that you're always with us and you're always protecting us. So we ask all this in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So once more, I want to just thank you all for joining us. And remember to love God, love people, do what's right, and walk humbly before your God. We'll see you next week at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you, Pastor. Take care.
Thank you, Doc.
Good job, guys. Well done.
Dr. Christie, you got a lot of, I would love to have you as my doctor. So hopefully you'll see an influx of people coming in.
Yeah,
Are we taking new patients?